Allison Janes is a graduate of the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. During her senior year, she was slapped with an honor code violation that could have brought disciplinary action, ranging from a written warning to probation with restrictions. Her offense? Allison and fellow University of North Carolina student Robert Sinnott organized a peaceful on-campus protest of UNC's free speech policies. Policies that restrict demonstrations to 2 free speech zones, one very small and the other in a remote area of campus. Allison and 40 or so fellow students emphasized their point by gathering outside those zones at a spot near the library.
This corner of lawn right here is one of the free speech areas on UNCG's campus. And as you can see, it's very well traveled. There's lots of students that walk by, except it's tiny. There's not even enough room for one group, let alone a huge group of students or more than one group. So when we had our protest in November, we simply moved our demonstration down to that second tree over there, and they told us that that was somehow illegal, even though we weren't disrupting classes or blocking any walkways. This arbitrary policy said it was okay to stand here and not okay to stand right down there.
Allison wanted to protest the existence of these zones, believing, and I believe rightfully, that a university itself should be a free speech zone for the society. So she set up a protest outside of the free speech zones. She was brought up on charges of lack of respect, and I'm not even entirely clear what that means, under the University of North Carolina Greensboro speech code.
Allison decided to challenge a university administration more concerned with the trappings of decorum than with the rights of free assembly and speech. Allison is the founder and past president of the UNCG College Libertarians. Robert is the current president.
It wasn't until late in my junior year that I actually found out about these free speech zone policies. And from there I realized that these are wrong and I had to get rid of them somehow.
Allison is convinced her actions were justified.
The First Amendment guarantees the right to free speech on all public property. So this issue is not arbitrary. There was a reason that I took it up, and it wasn't just to make trouble with the university community. It was to protect the rights of the individuals on campus.
She and Robert organized a demonstration protesting the free speech zone and staged it outside of the free speech zones.
We put up flyers around campus the week before, telling people about it, telling friends about it, things like that. The idea had come to us about in the fall, early fall, but as the date approached, we told lots of people about it, and then at around midnight the day before, we sent an email to the administration. So it was the first thing that they read in the morning.
The university was ready and waiting.
When we arrived at the library that morning, we had police officers waiting for us, we had administration waiting for us. They obviously had heard about it and were ready. We set up anyway, we kind of ignored them.
University officials, though, didn't ignore the protesters.
After about a half an hour, the administration approached us and requested that we move about a block over to the free speech zone. I said we weren't willing to do that, and then she asked for our names and the student ID numbers of everybody present. Of course, I told her that we weren't willing to do that either. And from there she said that we could be asked to leave, we could be removed, and we could be charged with disciplinary action.
Although university officials chose to take no action at the time, the incident was far from over.
We thought that it would be a simple procedure and we'd go to the chancellor with the petition forms that people had signed to try and get rid of these zones. But about a week and a half after the protest, we got an email scheduling a preliminary hearing for a violation of student code of conduct.
She consulted with fire before organizing the protest.
I just explained what we were going to do. I explained the situation at UNCG and asked for some advice. And they told us to proceed with what we were planning, to not back down, to be very firm in our beliefs of what we were trying to portray, and that we would take it from there and see how things went at the protest itself.
After charges were filed, fire became directly involved.
by having a code that banned anything that might not show respect, they had instituted an unconstitutional speech code. And this isn't, just my legal opinion. This is, half a dozen cases have made it very clear that you can't simply ban anything that a university deems not being respectful, that a public university deems. That's just too vague, it's too broad, and of course it gets used in ridiculous situations where someone's trying to legitimately protest something real, like an Orwellian speech zone.
As always, FIRE's first course of action was to send a letter.
We always give universities a chance to do the right thing. We explain what our understandings of the facts are. We give them the opportunity to respond. We give them the opportunity to rectify the situation before we take a case public.
Since its founding, FIRE has acted on behalf of scores of students and professors whose rights have been threatened or violated.
The defense of individual students and faculty, the education of students and faculty, the education of the public, and public exposure, shame, humiliation of people who would abuse positions of power and education to put coercion, indoctrination, censorship, repression, and double standards in the place of their promised decency and free environment for the exploration of ideas and free communication of ideas. All of that constitutes the mission of FIRE.
Allison Jane's case was settled relatively quickly.
After we took UNCG public, the university tried to stand by what it had done for a little while, but eventually the university, actually in the course of a couple weeks, abandoned the prosecution of the students on the basis of respect, and have looked into their free speech zone policy.
It was really a wonderful feeling to know that at the end of all of this, that we had changed an unconstitutional policy. When it was all said and done, there were still policies in place that we don't agree with, but they were a whole lot better than the ones that existed. And hopefully FIRE can help us in the future, and we can continue to challenge these policies and push for more individual freedoms on campus.
Because universities often can't defend in public what they do in private, the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education will continue the fight.
A nation that doesn't educate in liberty will not long preserve it and will not even know when it has lost it.